Hey everyone, it's Rick Theriault, your Maine Real Estate Guide. Today is a early April day. We got a little bit of snow and sleet and freezing rain last night. Sun's peeking through the clouds today. That's kind of the mixed bag of weather that you get in Maine this time of year. What I'd like to talk to you about today is heat with wood. A little more elaboration on that and kind of my history with wood heat. And it goes back a long time. I'm 60 years old now and lived here in Maine my whole life. I grew up in a small town not too far from here back in the mid-60s into the early 70s. You know, at the house that I grew up in when I was a kid, initially we heated primarily with oil. And then if you dig back in the Google archives, for those of you that are a bit younger than I am, back in the 70s, it was the first Arab oil embargo when the Arabs restricted the flow of oil from the Middle East to the United States, and it drove the price of heating oil and gasoline and everything through the roof. There were gas rationing lines, and it was an awful time. It was a real bad time. And that's when we started to supplement our heat at our home with firewood. Initially we had, I think my stepdad had bought an old Franklin wood stove, and you look those up. They were, back when Ben Franklin invented the Franklin wood stove. It was quite an innovation over a fireplace, but they're not the most effective heating source by any stretch, because they're definitely not an airtight stove. But nonetheless, it did keep us warm. And then a little bit later on, they transitioned to, I think they bought an Ashley wood stove, similar to the one of those of you who follow along with the Rick Theriault Living the Dream series and my renovation at my camp. The Ashley stove that's there is very similar to the one that was in our basement for a while in the house that I grew up in. And then after a fashion, back during the Jimmy Carter era, there I guess we bought a wood boiler that worked in conjunction with the oil boiler. So you could either heat with oil and or wood, and so in the wintertime we used the wood boiler to keep the house warm. And that was a pretty good way to go. But all those methods of burning wood required splitting wood. And growing up as a as a kid in those days, there wasn't an app for splitting wood, and I don't think there still is. But anyway, we started my wood splitting journey with a device very similar to this one here, kind of a splitting axe. And as a 12 or 13-year-old kid that weighed about 90 pounds soaking wet, swinging that splitting maul on sticks of hardwood was was not easy. So you'd bang away on firewood for a while, and then put it away and go do something else. But you had to keep whacking at that wood pile because it took quite a bit of wood to stay warm. And I don't think I saw a wood splitter as a kid until, geez, I had to be almost out of high school, and there weren't very many at that time that were commercially available. That, as I recall, the first ones I saw were some local folks that were skilled with welders and backyard mechanic skills, put together wood splitters and those were the ones that I saw in the town that I grew up in from time to time. And I don't think I ever had an opportunity to use one till I was in college, and came back to help take care of the wood in the fall, so that my parents and siblings would stay warm. Now, fast forward to to where I'm at today. So I bought my own wood splitter a few years ago, and I've split an awful lot of wood with it, and I much prefer that to swinging a maul, I'll tell you. And I can come up here and I can pick away at splitting wood. It does a good job, and it really keeps you from banging up your shoulders and you know, just wearing yourself out. And you can split a pretty big stick. This particular model here, as you can see, I've got it in the vertical position, and that helps with larger pieces of wood like this, so that I don't have to heft them up, because when they're green, like this butt section over here probably weighs close to 100 pounds. So to grab that and heft it up onto the wood splitter in a horizontal position, that's how you get hernias. and I've had hernia surgery, so I don't want to replicate that anytime soon. So having one that tilts into the vertical fashion for the bigger pieces really is a saver of keeping your body in an unbroken fashion. I'm going to show you what I'm up to here. This is where the wood that I burned last winter came from, was this area of my woodshed up here on the hill. And I try to season my wood. We talked a little bit about seasoning wood a while back, and I try to season my wood for at least 2 years. So this stuff here, it will be, as I pick away and fill this area, so this whole area that I'm standing in here, there's roughly 1/3 of this building will all be firewood and look similar to that side over there, which will be, this is the seasoned wood that I'll be taking down and putting in my other woodshed for this next winter's heating season. And it's already dried for at least 2 years, so that's nice and dry. This stuff here is wet, and and I'll pick away and get this filled up here in short order. But here's some wood that prior to the snows coming last winter, I had hauled up on the hill, and I've been picking away at this pile. A lot of the stuff is still frozen to the ground, but I'll get this all cleaned up and then have to go get some more to buck up and then split and then stack and let it season. But so I've spent a long time utilizing wood, and even I mentioned I went to college. Even when I went to college, I couldn't escape firewood. It's kind of interesting as I think back upon it. The fraternity I belonged to when I was in college, our chapter advisor owned a heating oil company, and one of the things that we would do every fall for him was he would have us come over on usually it was a Sunday, typically, and we would spend the day at his house stacking firewood. Now this guy sold heating oil and heating appliances, and he owned Old Town Fuel Company, and but he heated his house with firewood. So that just speaks volumes to living in Maine with our long heating season, that probably the most cost-effective method of keeping your home warm in the wintertime is firewood. I guess, if you look back and think about that, here's a guy that bought oil at wholesale and sold it at retail to people, so he could fill up his tank much less than anybody else, and he burnt firewood. And he'd have the whole fraternity go over, and we'd split and stack his winter supply of firewood, and he would feed us beans and hot dogs at the end of the day. And it was a good event. It was fun, and got us out and doing a activity together as brothers in the fraternity. But this is a look around here. I don't know where all you folks are that are watching this video, but we still have snow on the ground. I did take my snowblower off my tractor the other day, and right now it's looking like we're going to get another 8 inches of snow on Wednesday, but it is what it is. It'll melt. For the most part, the winter's over. We're in this transition period here, and sometimes we'll get rain, sometimes we'll get snow, sometimes we'll get a mixed bag here in the early parts of April. I've even seen snow here because we're fairly close to Mount Katahdin, Maine's tallest peak here in the town of Millinocket. But I can remember going to the 4th of July parade with my youngest, who's now approaching 40, and standing on the side of the road on July 4th for the Independence Day celebration, and it was spitting snow. So you never know what you're going to have here in Maine. But that's some of the stuff that's going on here at the homestead. More firewood. It just never stops, and I've got I get some bees on order because some of you folks have been asking for a bee update. Well, my bees didn't make it through the winter. There was plenty of honey in the hive when I opened it up, so they didn't starve. I think what happened, looking at how they were dead in the hive, is it warmed up in January, and then I think they broke cluster, and then it dropped. The temperature dropped quickly that when the sun went down that afternoon, and the bees were scattered throughout the hive. And in order for bees to survive in the wintertime, they need to be in a tight cluster. So all the bees kind of congregate amongst one another in a big ball of bees in the center of the hive, and together they're able to stay warm, but separate they perish, and that's what appears to be what ended up happening. So I had ordered a replacement package of bees to be delivered, and I've ordered them in the past, and typically they would get delivered here either by UPS or Postal Service in May. And I just got notification that they're coming. They've been shipped already. They left Kentucky Saturday. So I'm very apprehensive that when the bees get here, they're going to be dead because it's cold. And Monday, Tuesday, in the mornings, it's going to be in the low 30s with snow Tuesday into Wednesday. So I'm a little apprehensive about. I'm not sure why that particular bee supplier decided to send bees to northern Maine in April. But more on that next time. So until next time, this is Rick Theriault, your Maine Real Estate Guide, on location here in Millinocket, Maine.